The Wholeness Network. Awaken to the reality of wholeness. Bryan Miller is a husband and father, writer and teacher, entrepreneur and philanthropist, and a spiritual coach. Within the Larry H. Miller Group of companies, Bryan serves on the board of directors and as executive director of culture. Outside the family enterprise, Bryan is president of a consultancy group that serves the needs of individuals and legacy families. He recently launched the School for Good Living, a coaching company dedicated to helping achievers live extraordinary lives of happiness, meaning, and contribution, and to helping legacy families position themselves for multi-generational success. Bryan's guiding philosophy is, live a life that matters.
We're so excited to have you join us today, Bryan. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you.
And I'm excited to hear you explain to us what is mindfulness.
Something I'm still figuring out, to be sure. There's a lot of different ways to talk about mindfulness, and none of the words that I've found for this yet I like. The term that I like most at this point is actually presence. But if you talk about mindfulness, you talk about presence. There's a lot of different ways of understanding it, defining it. One of the ways that I really like to think of it is merely being where you are, doing what you're doing when you're there.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's so simple, but not necessarily easy.
But it is hard, in a busy life to always be present.
Well, I think it can be, for sure. And someone pointed out to me that thinking can be addictive, that we can become addicted to our thoughts. And, thinking is not the same as experiencing. So how we can more fully experience life and not just live in our concepts of life, that's an interesting question. I think that's a worthwhile question. Some of the other ways that I've heard mindfulness talked about that I find really useful, David G. talks about mindfulness as the progressive quieting of the fluctuations of the mind, which I thought that was an interesting, and I like that one because I experience that. If I make a conscious effort to still my mind and to watch my thoughts and not be, chasing my thoughts or lost in my thoughts, that it is and I more fully associate myself as the observer of those thoughts, that I can see the progressive quieting of the fluctuations of the mind. So that's one thing. And then another one that I actually really like is this idea that meditation, which is different from mindfulness, but related, right? I've heard a description of meditation as merely a special form of concentration, right? So where we put our attention, what we're concentrated on. And I think that's really interesting and very useful.
Yes. And so there's many ways to apply mindfulness meditation being one, but even being mindful in your eating, being mindful in your living, being mindful
in the shower.
Yeah, every moment.
Every
That's
moment.
Right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. So how would somebody know in their life that they needed to stop and be more mindful? When can you feel yourself out of balance, or what point do you know that I need to stop right now and quiet that mind?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I think of is I don't think that anyone needs to. I don't think I don't think it's a need. It might be. I tend to think of it more as a desire. And someone once told me, when the pain is bad enough, we'll change. But life typically seems to work until it doesn't, in whatever area, in relationships, in our career, in our health, whatever. And so my experience is when it usually takes a dramatic, traumatic kind of event, like a wake-up call for somebody, a diagnosis, a divorce, losing a job, something like that, before they realize, they want to make significant changes in their life. Right. I think what's really magical is that we could decide that at any moment, but most of us don't. We wait until the pain is bad enough and then we choose to live or be a different way. But just to go back to where I started. I don't think anyone needs to, right?
It's a choice.
Yeah.
Right.
Ultimately, I think it's a choice.
Right.
For you, has it been something that has it been life-changing for you to go in that direction? Was it a night and day difference, or was this something that was kind of part of your life all along? Or was there?
No, being mindful was never a part of my life, at least consciously, for the first 3.5 decades. It's only in the last 7 years or so, 6-7 years, that it's something that I've made a conscious effort to live. Yeah.
Don't you find that? I think last 7 years is probably an interesting number. There's a lot of people that probably I'm in that same time frame as well.
Yeah.
Not associated with it at all. And now I really couldn't live without it,
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. Someone who taught me a process that I use, a meditative and mindfulness process that I use, that I've been doing every morning and every night now. I haven't missed a day of doing this particular practice in 2 years. Suggested that once I incorporated it into my life, that it would become like brushing my teeth. That no matter what, I wouldn't, stop doing it. And that's totally been the case. And it doesn't matter for me what time zone I'm in, how busy I am, if I'm sick, whether I feel like it or not. It's a decision that I've made. And I'm not to say that I'll do it forever. Maybe I'll make a different decision at some point. But since, it's nearly 2 years, I haven't missed one time, morning or night.
That's a goal of mine. When my mom was born in the 30s, and her mom would sneak her baking soda to brush teeth because it was more frivolous at the time, and now it's just part of our identity. I hope that taking time to pay attention to the other parts of you becomes so. Have you heard that? Just makes me say yes. That's
I hope
the
so
goal.
too.
Yeah.
That same person also said that it's a bit like taking a mental bath. Right? Like you cleanse yourself in a way. And if you think about, if you didn't bathe for years,
right?
What would that be like for the people around you? Right? And many of us don't take a mental bath or do anything to consciously cleanse our other selves, our emotional self, our mental self, our spiritual self. And what a disservice we're doing to those who love us or who have to spend time with us.
So true.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so how long is that practice morning and night? Is it a set time, or are you just...
So I don't set a timer, but it averages about 21 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Which is I do feel is a big commitment. I remember I read Deepak Chopra's book, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, many years ago. And that was the first time I encountered the suggestion to meditate 30 minutes a day. I was like, who has time for that? Who would do that? So for me, it's not, in fact, I think many people who attempt to jump in with a commitment like that, they often set themselves up to fail because they haven't organized their life in a way that's conducive to that. Yes. For me, there were many years where my practice looked nothing like that. Like literally there were days where it was 1 minute, but I did it for 1 minute to preserve the discipline and to prove to myself that I had the commitment and for the benefits that I experienced, which I do experience.
That's great advice.
That's
do what
amazing.
you can. Just keep doing it. And now I think Deepak's 2 hours a day he's up to.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. As you've traveled around the world, because you've gone to many countries, what's the number now?
Nearly 70.
Oh my goodness. Do you find pieces of mindfulness everywhere you go? Do you find them practicing mindfulness in different ways? Or
how different is it around the world?
Well, what I find is like everything, I think almost everything in life, it really is a bell curve, and you find people that are very present. They're very mindful. Many of those same people are also very kind, very generous. And there's people that are maybe less kind, less present, less thoughtful. And I don't think it really has anything to do with the particular place or the city or whatever. I think it's just, there's people like that everywhere, whatever that is,
And Michelle was wondering about your degree.
Yeah, your East.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about that
So
process.
Asian studies. So I have from the University of Utah, I've got a degree in Asian studies and a degree in English. I've always loved languages, and I've had a hard time making up my mind. So, someone once suggested, when given a choice, choose both. And I pursue that. Of course, there's a Japanese proverb, chase 2 hares, catch neither. So there's both sides. But I've really been drawn to Asian studies my whole life. And as I said, language. And I studied in Japan for a few years. And I've studied the language for 5. I studied for about a year, 1 academic year in Japan. And since then, it's only the last few years that I've really started to study India. And I thought, how was I an Asian studies major and didn't really study India? And now I've really enjoyed learning about its history and its culture and all of its diversity. More than 800 languages, spoken there. It's incredible.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
So here's a question. As a business owner, is it possible to incorporate mindfulness in business, or is that just something you do personally and you bring your very mindful self into your business? Do you work as a group on mindfulness, or?
We do, yeah. The saying, how you do anything is how you do everything, right? And so I think if you're a mindful person, you pretty much can't not bring it into your business. And conversely, if you don't practice mindfulness, you probably won't invite it into your business. And I think it's true with basically any organization, any group of people, that the leader does seem to have a disproportionate influence on the culture and, the goings on of any given set of activities. So yeah. And I'll also say this, it's not to say, I don't think it's one is better than the other per se. Where I do think mindfulness has a real utility in business is being associated with one's purpose, right? Because if a business's purpose is only to maximize profit, to do the thing that basically every business school teaches, which is maximize shareholder value at all costs. If you carry that out, pure capitalism, to its extreme, it's actually very destructive. It's destructive to environments. It's destructive to people. It's exploitative, perhaps totally ungoverned, just in its pure form. And don't get me wrong, I love capitalism. I love free enterprise. I think that ultimately it's elevated more people than anything we've created as a species, except maybe language, right? So it's a very powerful thing. But I think mindfulness can help us really remember, why are we doing what we're doing, right? And then be deliberate about how we do it, remembering that people, are people. People matter. People have experiences. They're not just resources, right? They're not just consumers, but that we have the chance to impact people's lives, just by interacting, by buying something from them if they're a vendor, by selling to them if they're a customer or a client, by employing them and thinking about what is that experience all the way around, including for the environment, and I think being mindful lends itself to those, preserving an awareness of those things, not just going, okay, it's 8 a.m. Let's get to the office and how many sales calls can we make and how can we minimize expenses and maximize revenues and just pump that bottom line. I think that's ultimately very unfulfilling to the human spirit. And we're seeing it in the way millennials work. We're seeing it in engagement, rates of employee engagement. So it's showing up. And I happen to think that it's part of what's not working about our society in terms of, addiction or depression or even divorce rates and, family lives and this kind of thing. So yeah, I know I said I don't think one is better than the other, but I do think that people are likely to experience many benefits of practicing mindful business or conscious capitalism.
How did you do that? Because it would have been so easy for you to just go on that corporate track.
Yeah.
Were you taught that? Was that something from the beginning, or is that something you've really taken on and brought to your business?
Yeah. What's that Native American saying about when all the forests are cut and all the rivers are dead, we'll discover we can't eat money, something like that.
Oh.
And what I've experienced in my life, having grown up inside a successful family business and having privilege and having opportunity and having access to resources, is that I wasn't fulfilled. I found myself in a place that I think many people wish they were, not having to work, having a large network, having incredible opportunity. And when I saw that I was not happy, I knew there had to be something more. It wasn't another zero at the end of my net worth that was going to make me happy. I was very clear about that. And it wasn't anything I could buy, because by then I'd bought a lot of stuff. I'd done a lot of things, and none of that brought lasting satisfaction. So I knew there must be something else.
Wow. That's a big character you have to pull yourself out of that. That is very admirable, because I can imagine that I think so many people think if I have this and this, I'm good.
Yeah.
And it's not the case.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a mentor, Marshall Goldsmith, who he has this saying, the great Western disease, and he himself he's American, he's white, right? Mm-hmm. But he is a student of Buddhism, which is amazing to me that he's one of the world's, if not the world's leading CEO coach. And here's this guy that subscribes to, some of these principles. But he says the great Western disease is I'll be happy when.
Yeah. That's so true. Wow. That's so true.
And that's the opposite of that is mindfulness.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is so powerful about mindfulness is that, first of all, this idea that I love to discuss with people, that nothing is upsetting in the present. If you're truly present, whatever you're dealing with it. You're not judging it. You're not evaluating it. You're not resisting it. You're not even looking forward to something. You're just there dealing with it. But the other thing is that in the present moment, my experience, and pretty much the experience of everyone I've worked with on this topic, is that what's there in the present moment is gratitude. Is when you really get present, that there's this profound sense that goes beyond the language's ability to describe, right? But for me, it occurs like everything's a gift. But if I'm not in the present moment, if I discover myself suffering, what I call suffering in any way, if I'm unhappy, if I'm stressed, if I'm frustrated, right? If I'm angry, every time that I've been paying attention, I'm not present. So all of those things become for me a signal. Oh, hey, here's your opportunity. This is your reminder to return to the present moment.
We were talking to a gentleman that was a near-death experience, and the way he described it, I asked him, he said, over there, this is the dream. It's much clearer over there. And I said, do you think it's because the present moment, you are just only in the present moment over there? Because here you are constantly being pulled in different directions. And and we discussed that. I thought that is fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, and then they come back with pure love and joy and gratitude. And why? Because they were just always experiencing the moment that they were in while they were there.
Yeah. The eternal now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. As we've talked about mindfulness, I think that's so helpful to people to understand there's so much depth in the moment. Every moment has a depth that is easy to miss. Yeah. But when you feel that presence and feel that gratitude, it really enriches lives.
Yeah. And before we wrap up on the topic of mindfulness, this
keep going.
Realization that any of these insights, any of these concepts, any of these ideas, as amazing as they might be, as useful as they might be, they're not the experience.
Right. That's true.
Right? So it's kind of like this, well, you can learn a lot about tennis, or you can learn a lot about swimming or riding a bike, but until you go play tennis or you go swim or you go ride a bike, you haven't learned what there is to learn about those things. Mm-hmm. So Sharon Salzberg, an amazing teacher of mindfulness, talks about the most important part of meditation is sitting down to do it, right? Or mindfulness is bringing yourself into the present moment. Mm-hmm. And that is a practice. So for anybody who's watching this or listening to this, I just hope that, they take whatever's useful from this discussion, and then they go beyond, these great ideas or maybe what might be inspiring concepts, and they actually get to the experience, right? This is like great the finger advice. Pointing at the moon, kind of thing. Yeah. But don't mistake the finger for the moon.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. Thank you for listening. Join the community of knowledge and growth at thewholenessnetwork.com.